Okay.
I forget. We haven't talked in so long. I forget if I used to have like an intro or something. I don't think so. I think I just said hello, Alfredo.
Yeah. Good to see you.
How
Long
are
time
you?
no here.
How's it going? How's
It's
paper?
going.
How's paper writing?
Uh Horrible. It's good. Thanks to you. So we're pushing through. So that's nice.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. I tried to think about it and then not to think about it, and that's where I'm at, man.
Writer's block is a real thing.
Um, I had no idea. Thank
Are
you.
Are you familiar? If anyone in my life would be familiar with him, you would be. Are you familiar with Stephen Pressfield?
No.
He's
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. He wrote this book called The War of Art, not the Art of War, The War of Art. And he's a writer. He wrote, I guess, like Bagger Vance, some random movies and stuff. But he says an actual prayer. He's a Christian, but he says an actual prayer to the muse when he sits down to write.
Oh, I think you sent me something about that. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
It's called The Invocation of the Muse. It's like the first paragraph of the Iliad by Homer. And it's just this little prayer he does to the muse. It's kind of cool. He's like, I know there's not a muse, but it's
an invocation for inspiration. I like it.
Exactly.
I might try. I might do that then.
So
because we're on the less hurdle.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. We are recording today because I got to do a cool interview on a podcast, and I was like, man, I need to have something to plug, because everyone goes on there and they're selling a book. They say, follow me on Twitter. I don't have any of that stuff. And I was like, well, I've got a podcast with my buddy Alfredo. So we should start recording again.
Yeah. How did it go?
It went great, man. It was, you don't listen to podcasts at all, huh? Do you do YouTube videos, or what do you watch?
No, I do YouTube and I do podcast for Peterson. I've subscribed to a few channels.
Nice.
Yeah.
So these guys, I started listening to them. I remember my daughter was like just born. And these guys were some of the first to interview like Randall Carlson from like, Graham Hancock related stuff. And they interview people like that. They've interviewed Graham Hancock. They've interviewed all sorts of people. And so some of it's a little out there. Like they get into a lot of like mystical, spiritual stuff, which I'm interested in. But some of the people are like, man, they're a little out there, but they've had like some big guests, and it was weird. I was super nervous, man. I was so nervous. As soon as we started talking, it was fine. But
was it through Zoom?
Yeah, it's just like this.
Like this.
Yeah. And it's like
amazing.
It's weird because I feel like I know them. Like I've listened to there's an hour of them talking a week for 6 years.
Wow. How did you get that invite?
I asked for it. no shame.
That is so cool.
Yeah, no shame at all.
No, not at all.
How did it come up? They had a show about fasting. Okay. And I'm super familiar with this guy they interviewed and his research. I was like, and then I heard it was kind of controversial.
Why?
Because the guy, he's a researcher, but he's pushing a product, like it's kind of commercial.
Yeah.
And so whatever,
What's wrong with that?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, like figure out a way to make some money. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. But I had to pay loads, right?
Exactly. So he's a big time researcher, like USC, UCLA, no joke. But I was like, well, that's kind of what I'm writing about. It's part of what I'm writing about. So I'll ask. And they said yes. So it was cool, man. They wanted.
How long was that?
What's that?
How long was it?
I think it was about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour. Yeah. It was cool. I mean, we talked about diet, exercise, sleep, sun, friendship, all the different things that make you healthier, And they wanted to talk about evolution a lot, which I was game to talk about, like some issues that I have with evolution, and that they.
Did you feel free talking to them?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Like it was just free flowing?
Yeah, and maybe I shouldn't have, because they have a decently big audience, so I might be like, oh boy.
Man.
We didn't get into any of the like real controversial stuff. Like we didn't talk about politics.
So you're safe then.
Yeah,
you're good.
So we're all good.
Oh, politics?
No politics.
Oh yeah, no.
Yeah, no politics. little religion, no politics.
That's okay.
and that's actually what I wanted to ask you about
Uh-huh.
is I know you haven't seen it, but I think that's okay. Is some questions about Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson's stuff, particularly their new documentary on Netflix called Ancient Apocalypse. And
You know what? Since you mentioned that, I have seen three
oh, nice.
episodes.
Oh, wow,
So,
nice.
so yes, yeah, I remember. It's like, wait a minute, Trevor talked to me about this, and yes, I've seen it. It's pretty interesting. The guy he's getting it from left and right, but
Yeah.
you gotta appreciate the enthusiasm and
Yeah.
inspiration, and it's actually quite intriguing. I like the 3D models that they actually
Yep.
do.
Yep. Yeah, that was pretty
And
cool. Yeah.
that was really cool. Like renditions,
Yep.
that they do. It's like, oh, that's how it used to look like not all this mess. So it's really interesting stuff. I think it's
Even
into something.
even if you hadn't seen it, I know you kind of follow all that stuff. So you would
I
kind of know the general
do,
idea.
especially the second chapter, which done a lot of studies on, and the actual reading of the codex for the Aztecs. And so,
Wait, what do you mean by second chapter? What's that?
I think that's when they went to Mexico and they
Oh,
had
okay,
the
okay.
pyramids and
Gotcha.
how the Spaniards saw all that, and
So
they
that's where Aztecs
panicked.
comes in. Okay, yeah.
And so basically burn all the codex, what they have codexes or codices were what they would use to write. And so I actually learned how to read that stuff, which is really cool.
Nice.
The years and what it meant, because it's all about symbols and little dots, and it's quite interesting. Anyway, so yeah, that's really good stuff. Thank you for. I need to finish it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think there'll be anything in there that you weren't sort of aware of, but
Mhm.
I was trying to get a buddy of mine to start a show with me. Again, leading up to this, I was like, I just got to have something to plug on Grimerica. That's the name of the show, Grimerica. And and so I was like, dude, you got to do one with me. And he's like, well, what do you want to talk about? And I was like, well, you have some wild beliefs. Like he's one of my really good friends. So
That's awesome.
I'm not making fun of him at all. It's going to sound like,
No.
it's going to sound like him, but he's got some out there beliefs. Like just to give you some examples,
That's a good friend.
yeah. I mean, he thinks the world is flat. He thinks space is fake. He thinks, we've never been, that we live under a dome. And it's like, okay, whatever,
cool.
Whatever.
No, that's
Like,
cool.
it's not stuff that comes up in conversation. Like we don't ever talk about it. We've never spoken about it.
People are gonna be quick at labeling you. That's the thing.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I didn't really give him a hard time or anything. It's just, I'm like into, space related stuff and companies and stocks and stuff. So that's where we disagree a lot. We disagree a lot on that particular topic.
Which one, the stocks or the space?
Space, that it's real. He thinks it's fake.
Oh,
or not that it's
okay.
fake, but it's not what we think it is, and we can't get there. Humans
At
can't
all?
At all.
I want to know where he gets that from.
I know. Well,
That's kind of cool.
it's
I want to
partly
think that way,
like he has.
but I can't anymore.
So like all of his viewpoints are. It's like his interpretation of the Bible. Like he's
Okay.
very literal about that stuff, and so
Okay.
that was going to be the basis of our show. Like we'll talk about.
Sure.
Anyway, so at first I thought Ancient Apocalypse was going to be something we could agree on because he's anti-mainstream. Anything mainstream, he's against. And so I'm like, well,
I understand why.
I'm like, Graham Hancock's not mainstream at all, right?
But maybe a sellout. I'm sorry.
He hated
No,
it. He hated it. He's like, he's a Satanist. He was calling
Right.
Graham Hancock a
See what I mean?
Satanist because the Earth is only 6,000 years old.
Oh, cool.
And I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot that's a thing. And so I mentioned that to you, and you're like, no, I don't agree with that. And you have a better understanding of this the Bible.
I think you do too. No, it's just no. And then
Well, no. So now I want to know, like, what do you think about that?
Well, you have to know where the Bible. First of all, you have to know which Bible you're reading, right? Because they're all a little different. Even though the first five books are pretty straightforward, they haven't changed a whole lot. The Torah, written by Moses, way years after, according to scholars, years after the creation, like years after Genesis, he wrote it, right? So
Right.
but we have to believe that's the living word of God. Funny you mentioned that because I was actually reading chapter 1, verse 1 about 2 weeks ago. I had a nice bottle of wine and I opened it. It was Federalist, a nice wine from
Ooh,
California, Cab. It was delicious. I drank two
nice.
bottles. And so, yeah, it was nice. And but I started asking questions. And so I came across Genesis, right? Because we all have to go back to the beginning, right? To understand what is this mayhem, right? That's happening right now. This
Exactly.
trains of thoughts. Like you have to go back to the basics. So if you read carefully, uh, the Bible. So I normally read three versions of it, which is close to the source because it's a mess. Do you know anything about where, how, who put
I
the Bible together?
I thought I had a pretty good understanding of it, but
It's
it
super
sparked
complex.
a lot of arguments with my friend. So
Oh,
I don't really
super
know
complex.
what's like something that I've been, indoctrinated into, which is what he was saying, or if it's accurate. So go ahead.
The most accurate is basically the King James version.
Yep.
That's close to the source. So if you want to talk to someone about that, you have to have that.
Right.
The other one would be a queen in Spain, Reina Valera, with 1960, which is pretty close to King James. So I normally have if you read in different languages, it's even better, right? Because not all translations are the same. So anyway, I normally have, and then the NIV, which everyone reads, and it's a disaster, right?
NIV. What's that?
Yeah, New International Version.
Oh,
That's
okay. Okay.
that's bad.
Okay.
So it's horrible. So, but people seem to love it because it's easy read.
And so the idea is that it was Latin and then Greek, or the Protestant Reformation, it got translated into all the different languages, right? So it
Correct.
was Latin, and
Correct.
then it got but then there's lots of different versions, different interpretations, different translations.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And then from the main source, right? But so some of the original manuscripts actually got lost and never recovered. And the closest that we got is a New King James, the King James, all King James, but no one reads Old English. Like you
Right.
cannot
Right.
understand it. So the New King James version is actually even better because we can relate to that, but it's attached to the original manuscripts, which is cool. Anyway, I'm telling you on this because if we're gonna go and base our facts and truth in the Bible, then we have to come up with the right source because it clearly says before creation, and this is where I was telling you that Earth is a bit older than 6,000 years, is because there was water around Earth before Earth got formed. Isn't that cool? And
Oh, interesting.
the spirit of God was moving along the waters. I mean, you can read that clearly.
Well, okay. So I have a question about that. So, say you wanted to take a super like cynical, not religious point of view on that. Like, say, because Graham Hancock, I think, is an atheist, right? And that was part of the problem
Mhm.
my friend was having, or that he's like spiritual, but he doesn't know, agnostic, maybe, I don't know.
Okay. Well, I heard a quote that it takes a lot of faith to be agnostic.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, I like that
You know what I
very
mean?
much,
Yeah.
very
So
much.
look. So, for instance, New King James version, I have it right here. Genesis 1, verse 1, like the very first
Okay,
thing. Well, it says in the beginning, as you know, God created the heavens and the earth, and then verse 2 says the earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep. And it continues, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters.
that's interesting.
That's it.
So
So there
imagine,
was, uh huh.
imagine like the different interpretations of the word world, right?
Hmm.
And so,
Well, it doesn't even say world; it says earth,
oh, it does
which
say
is the same
Earth.
thing.
It does say
Which is the
Earth.
same thing. It's the same. It's the same thing. So there's this planet. For instance, if we go like the moon, Europa, right?
Hmm.
One of the moons up there, it's void, formless, right? Or even Mars, right? It's a void. There's no air.
Mm-hmm.
It's formless. Well, it has a little form, but there was yeah, and the Spirit of God was hovering over. So there was water here already.
that's the part that's interesting to me, because the central thing about ancient apocalypse is that the entire world was flooded,
Yes.
covered in water.
Twice.
So it's like, does
We don't know there was actually Earth, like Earth before the creation. He just says the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters.
it's just I'm trying to reconcile, because it was a non-starter for us. We couldn't even talk about it, because it's like, I can't believe in any of it, because he's talking about humans living 12,000 years ago, and the Earth is only 6,000 years old. And so
You
I'm
mean
trying.
Hancock?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
My
yeah.
friend was saying, like, I can't even take
Oh,
it
I see.
seriously, because they're talking about humans living 12,000 years ago, and the Earth is only 6,000 years old. And I'm like, well, I mean, man, I just for me that's hard to reconcile, just because I'm like, it's, why do we have carbon dating and sedimentary analysis in agreement? Like, I know carbon dating has issues, but like, how
Quite a bit of issues. That's why it's not like law.
but if
That's
we
the
can,
thing with in the science, but that's the closest we've ever gotten.
right. And so, like, there's this idea of convergent validation, where it's like, if you have a bunch of different methods
Correct.
that are all sort of accurate, and they're all
Correct.
independently saying the same thing, it's like, okay, then it's worth more than the sum of its parts, right? Like, and so I don't know. I'm like, can't get around that.
Well, let me ask you this: do you think we're the final version
Well,
of creation of human?
I guess that's kind of what I'm saying by, like, the interpretation of the word world. Like,
Right.
that could just refer to our era, since, like, the last
Right.
flood, right?
Right. Uh-huh.
Although I know that doesn't quite line up with the Bible either, but
What do you mean?
well, because the flood happened, obviously. The flood in the Bible happened after Genesis, obviously, but
Or during Genesis?
it did.
You mean after creation? Yes, it happened after
Right.
creation.
Right.
We don't know how.
So what does the Bible actually says that the earth is 6,000 years old?
No.
It doesn't?
No.
Well, so where does that number come from?
You really want to know?
Yeah.
Ellen G. White.
I've heard non-Adventists say that, though.
Yeah, and a few other ones that are in Accord. It's like it's like a comedy. Yeah, no.
I got to Google this.
Yeah, please do. But the thing is, we're not 6,000. Well, maybe this version. This is what I'm trying to tell you.
For
Maybe this
people
version-
listening, Ellen G. White is like the founder of the Seventh-day Adventist religion, which is
Yes, sorry.
people are going to know who that is. So that's
Okay.
my friend. That's his specific denomination. So okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So that's huge in the SDA, but even non-SDA, I think Baptists as well believe that. But
I'm just seeing a lot of stuff saying the Bible says the earth is 6,000 years old, but I can't find the actual word. Where in the
I don't know.
Bible?
Let me know if you find something, but I don't think so. Do you think we're the final version? That's what I'm trying. Do you think there were versions of us before us?
I do. That's what I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think now this is a question? Do
Oh,
you
listen
think
to
there
this. Listen to this. The Bible does not explicitly say 6,000 years
What did I
anywhere.
tell you? Sorry. I read a little.
It says this is where it comes from. It says the earth was created in 6 days, and 1,000 years in heaven is like one day on earth.
No, they base it on, listen, context. Text without context is pretext. Okay, so
yeah, that doesn't mean anything to me. Yeah.
Exactly. Just because some prophet wrote that, I think Isaiah wrote that, or I don't know who wrote. Yeah, prophet wrote that, and it's somewhere in the Bible. It's just saying it's trying to explain the concept of time, which is invented by us humans to bear with eternity. Okay.
Yeah.
God did not create time, right? It's not existent. That's a human invention.
Oh man, there's just pages and pages of like people saying like it doesn't. Like, okay. And I mean, I don't know what he would think of that. He might say, well,
Well, you can always defend. It's
Yeah.
like confirmation bias, right?
Right,
You can
right.
always find research that supports your point of view, and that's
Exactly.
the thing. It never ends. It's like it never ends.
And when you're dealing with something that is subject to so much interpretation and translation, it's like, man, like, I don't know.
You're as right as I am,
Exactly.
basically.
It's like I'm open to it, man, but like you're saying it like it's law, like it's a fact, and I'm
No,
like
no,
maybe
no.
not.
Your opinion is just your opinion.
But
Sorry.
so you were taking us in a more interesting direction. So that was just something I was
No,
bickering
I'm just
with on
open, and I've
Instagram.
read and I talk to people, and I'm just open to other ideas and just the word in itself. Like if you read the Bible carefully, it'll tell you that's the living word of God. So you just have to be open and be a transmitter,
Yeah,
just like Tesla was, right?
yeah.
Nikolai Tesla, he was just a transmitter.
I'm curious what he'll think of that because like yeah, because he knows I'm super skeptical, so it's kind of, we automatically get into like almost like an argument, whereas you have a much more similar to view to him than I do. So
Oh, is
um,
he?
yeah, that's interesting. So you were asking, are we the final version? I mean, no, and
No.
that's kind of what I meant by world. Like our world is from our creation, right, to our end, whenever that is. The
Mm.
creation of us, of humans,
Let me ask you a better
Yeah.
question. Do you think we're the do you think there were better versions before us?
Who knows?
Exactly.
Yeah, we just don't know, right? But we just don't know. But at the same time, watching that show, and I'm not putting any faith in that show. Like it's a lot of speculation, whatever. But it just does seem like there was a relatively advanced, like people advanced turns people off. I don't mean like cell phones. I mean there was a civilization building pretty impressive things way, way longer ago than we thought.
Hmm. But typically, yes. And if you look, there's always, and he mentions this, higher entities providing information to us,
Yeah, I love that.
right?
I love that.
Okay, so like there were, and that's in every religion, and none of those religions or ideologies they never talked to each other. It's not like they had internet back then, right? But all of them say the same thing:
That's what's
Ra,
so
the son
interesting.
of the
That's
son, the son of God.
that's
It's a
convergent
total,
validation. That's
yes,
independent sources having similar
yes,
stories. And
yes.
in the fact that, there was maybe this somewhat advanced civilization and that it was ended by a flood and that everyone has a flood myth.
Mhm.
Every religion, almost not every, but a lot of religions have a flood myth.
Yeah, it was a huge event. It was a huge event, but so we have to think about the transition or the point where we were created, and then why we got flooded. Right, basically, it was just a disaster. Right,
Yeah.
this version of us did not qualify for higher thinking, or maybe they were too advanced. And it says, remember the Nephilim and the
Mm-hmm.
giants
Mm-hmm.
saw the daughters of men that they were attractive, basically, and start having children.
That this is from the Bible, what you're saying?
Yeah, mating. Yeah, they were mating because they found the this fallen angels, the daughters of men, appealing, and that's where the giants came from.
Is that from the Torah or the New Testament?
That's Genesis.
Oh wow, that's interesting.
Yeah,
See, the
yeah.
the 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 Torah is interesting to me just because it's so much older. I mean, they're all interesting for different reasons, but the fact that comes from stories that were like 1,000 years old,
Hmm.
and it was
Hmm.
written what 3,000 years? No, 2,500 years ago, something like
Well,
that. So
well, the Torah is the first five books of the Bible.
right. No, I know that.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. Yes, you're right.
yeah.
Sorry.
I
Yes,
just
you're right.
someone told me you're not supposed to call it the Old Testament. I'm being politically correct.
Right, because it's only the first, the old. Right, you're right. You're absolutely right about that.
And
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
it's interesting to me because it's those were stories for like at least 1,000 years before they were written down.
Hmm.
So it's like we're getting pretty close to that time. So it would make sense that they would have stories about that, about the flood, about about us. They don't really talk about a civilization before, but there was a great Joe Rogan interview a few weeks ago with Randall Carlson
Mm.
and another guy. I forget his name. Jimmy Corsetti. And
Okay.
no, I'm sorry. It was Randall Carlson wasn't there. It was Jimmy Corsetti and this guy named Ben something. Anyway, they are making a case for they think they found Atlantis, and that it's in West
Then
Africa.
the Nazis thought the same thing.
Okay, tell me about that.
Well, that's where they were looking for, basically. That's
In
where they
Africa?
went to. No, 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 no. It's basically they had two places, Antarctica
Oh,
and yeah,
wow.
and then it's in between Europe and oh my gosh, Bermuda or yeah, all that, the Caribbean. I'm sorry, between Europe and the Caribbean, or Africa and the Caribbean. Between there, that's where the Atlantis is.
Africa and Caribbean. Well,
Yeah.
Google the eye of the Sahara.
Oh, okay.
And while you're doing it, I'll explain it. Do you have are you able to get on the internet right there?
Yeah, I was just looking at the giants, which is Genesis.
Actually,
6.
tell me more about the giants before you move on.
No,
I
that's
want to know
fine.
more about
Before
the
we go
giants.
there, well, it says right here. It's the title's called "The Wickedness of and Judgment of Men." This is just before the flood. Basically, the only reason why we got the flood. Uh, it became to pass when men began to multiply in the face of the earth, and the daughters were born to them, and the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were beautiful,
Oh man, that's interesting.
and
I
they
just
took
I'm sorry, I
no
just drove right
no
past that. That's interesting. Okay.
and right after that it says, and they took wives for themselves of all whom they chose.
So the giants were the people before the flood.
Yes. And the Lord said right after that, my spirit shall not strive with men forever. So he's breaking the covenant right there, for he's indeed flesh. Yet this says his days shall be 120 years. That's when we got the longevity, 120 right there. Boom.
Wow.
From 900, that Adam, and since you're into that, to 120. And then this is the interesting part. There were giants on the earth in those days. And also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them, those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown. That's it.
I was completely oblivious to that existing, that
Isn't
passage.
that cool? No, it's very powerful because it was a mess.
And I get why people like overanalyze the Bible, because it's like, man, each phrase is like, what does that wording mean exactly?
You have to read it with an open mind,
Yeah.
and have different resources. And like I was telling you, different translations, not someone's opinion. Just read different Bibles in different languages if
Is
you
that
can.
is that like the extent of the description of the world before the flood?
Yeah, that's it.
Wow.
That's it. Yeah, Genesis 6:5, right there.
And what
And then God is saying that he was so sorry. Literally it says here, and the Lord was sorry that he had made men on the earth, and he was grieved in his heart.
but who's he calling men? And who are the giants? So the giants and the men are two different things?
No, there were giants, men. It says men who were of old. Those were the mighty men. They're called the sons of God. Yeah. So the question is, who were the sons of God?
That's my question. Yeah, before how is that not what every like religious person is asking about? Like, who were the?
I don't know. There were. Well, this is funny you ask. This is basically either the fallen angels
right.
or angels themselves.
So the sons of God, the mighty men. This was pre-diluvian, pre-flood. These are
Right.
not human beings.
Right. And I was gonna say something, but I have nothing. I have no backup data for that. So
Well,
I
you can
won't
you can
say it.
speculate.
No, it's not a speculation. But it's crazy. But well, I'll tell you anyway.
Tell me.
So the ultimate goal, or goal back then of Satan, Lucifer, was to create life. He cannot create life. Only God can create life.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, Lucifer cannot. Satan cannot create life. He can destroy, but he can never create life. And the only means to create life is through women, right?
Right.
Right. Isn't
Oh
that crazy?
man. So
I know.
so what was the thing that like was upsetting to God to start the flood, that the men,
They were wicked. So it says here, it saw that the wickedness of men was great in the earth, whatever that
the
means,
the pre
wickedness.
the pre-flood men.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
And that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continuously
and the sons of God, which are not men, were having children with men.
with the daughters of men.
The daughters of men. So the sons of God were having children with the daughters of men.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Because they thought they were beautiful.
that's the reset.
And that's where the giants came. And so if you think about it, there were giants, those big monolith, the big rocks, the monoliths.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you want to have
Who are
like
we to say that
if,
they were not the ones moving those rocks?
if you wanted to have just like purely like this is just a historical document, right? No religion. You could say like kind of sounds like maybe there was another race on Earth that was interbreeding,
Yes.
and that was the older, more advanced civilization interbreeding with the new species, humans, and then the world flooded. The meteors.
Correct. That's what he says. And
Wow.
God did not like that. He was sad, basically. And then he said, I will destroy men whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast. I mean, he was really upset.
But then, not all of
And
them,
then
obviously, right?
and then he was sorry that he had made him. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. The end.
Okay, gotcha. Man,
Yeah, I know. So coming to think of what you're saying, Atlantis and all that, we don't know how long that took and for that interbreeding. And so it doesn't really say. There's no time frame. I mean, remember, these people live for hundreds of years, right?
hmm
So we can talk about, can a
it
lot of
says
things
that. It
happen
says that.
between 500? Well, he just cut it down to 120 years
Here's
after he saw that, which means that Adam, who lived for 900 plus years, right? A lot of things can happen in 900 years.
yeah. Here's why that's interesting to me for a million reasons, but one of the things I'm writing about right now is how, the our government, other governments have put billions and billions and billions of dollars into aging research, and they've come up with absolutely nothing. I mean, all they've really come up with is caloric restriction, which eat less food, exercise, just healthy lifestyle. That's all. With one maybe two exceptions, but one big exception, which is a drug called rapamycin. And I started looking into rapamycin, and I'm reading about it. I'm like, where did this name come from, rapamycin? I'm like, I know mycin.
Raptor?
I know it, Rapa, R-A-P-A.
Yeah, but I'm saying where that came from.
Okay, well, you're gonna like it. So
Okay.
I know mycin is like antimicrobial, antibiotic, antifungal. Rapa comes from Rapa Nui, which is the Polynesian name for Easter Island.
Oh, yeah. Okay. With the giant heads.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that is the only place on Earth where rapamycin can be found. It's found in the soil. It's made by a bacteria in the soil, and now it's made synthetically. But so the best intervention we have for extending lifespan right now in humans comes from Easter Island. That's kind of weird, right?
That is so cool.
So it makes me wonder, like, because there's evidence that there's similar architecture on Easter Island as Egypt and stuff. Not the heads, but there's like these stone walls that are really unique that are found all over the world, and they're much older than the stuff that's built around them. And I'm like, maybe this, ancient civilization they lived longer, and this was partly why they lived longer.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, we don't know how much longer, though.
No, we don't.
Right?
No.
Yeah. But there's evidence.
But like you're saying, like 900 years, for.
Oh, yeah. Well, when you have the architect and, he can he designed us, so he can just say, I'm going to take a little bit of the DNA sequence and just
Sure.
cut, right? Just do that.
Or, I mean, Yeah, because that's the thing. Whenever I say stuff like that, I do know people who automatically are like, that's satanic because
Why?
that's a scientific explanation. I'm like, that's magic. Like
God,
that could have just been God. Like
God is the ultimate scientist.
that doesn't offend me. If you want to say, hey, God put these little magical creatures in the dirt that released a compound that made these human beings live, like that's, dude, come on. That's like just because you can explain it doesn't make it, Satanism. So
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
So Google, let's see what time it is. We haven't been doing this too long. Another 15 minutes. So Google the Eye of the Sahara.
Let me see.
And so I'm sure you're very familiar with Plato, his ancestor Solon, I want to say, who's 4 or 5 generations older than him, went to Egypt, and they described their capital city, Atlantis, as having a certain number of rings and stuff. And it all matches this Eye of the Sahara. And so basically what he was claiming is that was the capital. And there's all sorts of evidence that it was buried in water during a flood. There's salt, there's ocean creatures at like 13,000 feet.
Oh, wow.
Fossils and stuff.
It's
and
beautiful.
that was the capital city, and that those people built the pyramids. The people that lived there. The pyramids were a part of their worldwide civilization. And then it was all destroyed in a flood. And the Egyptians inherited the pyramids from that previous civilization.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And they just basically just put their own initials
Started
and all
chiseling their terrible artwork into a lot of it's beautiful, but there's also, you can tell it's like the same people that did this did not build the pyramids. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm gonna copyright this thing right now. Boom. That's funny.
But apparently a lot of their history says that they're like a legacy, like they inherited this stuff from someone else. Yeah.
And that's the whole premise, right? Of Graham that's saying, hey, there's something underneath what we already know.
That's it. That's exactly it. And I like finding how, that can coexist with the biblical story. It seems like it can. It seems like,
why not?
First of all, I did not realize that it didn't say 6,000 years, so that was interesting. And also, I didn't realize
the giants.
I did not know that, man.
Not cool. There's another name called Nephilim, but
where does that word come from?
Nephilim?
Yeah.
Esoteric teachings. This is the thing. Yeah. So when you have a good foundation in the Bible and you know where you're standing, you can explore. Right?
Yeah.
Other
I like that you combine all of this stuff. It is interesting.
All the books. Yeah, that's the only way you come back to the truth, right? It's only if you are open to listen. That's all. Knowing where you're standing. See, people who don't know where they stand and how to defend what they know, they're scared. They're not willing to go a step further. And so when you read, for instance, the Forbidden Book of Enoch, do you know about that?
No.
Have you read it?
No.
Oh.
Tell me more.
No, that's another.
What is
that
it?
would be another.
What is it?
No, well, it was not put in the Bible for a reason because he's the father of languages, basically, and so he witnessed a lot of things that were happening in the beginning, even pre-flood. So he talks more about the Nephilim and things like that. What? So the Book of Enoch. So when the Christians were putting the Bible together, it's like, nope, this is not going to fly.
And this is like 100% a real book. Like it's historical.
Yeah. TMI, this is not going to happen. So, but manuscript survived and it was translated.
So that's something I brought up with people before, because like in public school, you learn about the redactors. Right. And throughout history, there have been political powers that have tried to alter the Bible, and that's kind of used to diminish Christianity. I'll be honest, like in a public school setting, they're like, see, how can you take anything seriously? Like, who knows what? I don't see it that way. I see it as like, I want to know what was there. Like, I want to know what was in those books, So you're saying that this is one of those things. Like, it's a book you can read.
Very powerful book. Yeah.
Wow.
It'll just kind of wake you up a little bit. Yeah. The Book of Enoch. He talks about colors in heaven, uh, how animals were had the ability to speak to humans. I mean, a lot of things.
Whoa. I'm definitely gonna read that. That sounds awesome, man. That's right up my alley.
Yeah, you could just look it up. It's interesting, but anyway,
And that word comes from the say I keep forgetting it. What is it?
Nephilim.
Nephilim.
Mhm.
And this was a
And
race
it's
of
and it's in
giants.
mythology, esoteric teachings. Neph, right? Kind of nephrology, but Nephilim.
Yeah.
Nephill. I think it's yeah. Oh no, one L. Yeah, Nephilim. The Nephilim are mysterious beings or people in the Hebrew Bible who are large and strong. So I think that name in itself is in the Bible.
Okay.
The Nephilim. It is loosely translated as giants in the Bible, in the Hebrew Bible. Yeah, Nephilim.
Dude,
Isn't
you're
that cool?
blowing my
Yeah.
mind right now. You're blowing my mind right now. Just because that's so interesting when you add it to the kind of stuff in that show in Ancient Apocalypse.
Well, this is where I think I'm going to share this to you. And this is where we're going to, I think, maybe close with this because the common denominator in all those, what would you call it, religions, cultures, societies, civilizations are basically knowledge from a higher being. And this higher being is typically
You
form
froze. You
of
froze. The
a
higher being is typically what?
in a form of a reptilian.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah. So this is just yeah. So and they were it's like Prometheus, right?
Yeah.
So they were giving knowledge to mankind to forge metal, for ladies to paint their know how to beautify themselves. So this is all from fallen angels. Okay, so if you read more, so these fallen angels had legions, and they had different. So they were teaching all these arts to men, and then that's how they created all these cultures. That's why these religions kind of say thank you to these gods.
And
for
then that all
creating.
got destroyed because
Correct. But if you go like the Aztecs, they have the flying serpent, and
yeah.
yeah, all this stuff, man. It's really interesting.
Wow, you blew my mind. Okay. Yep, we can end on that. Can we end? This was a very like Bible-based episode. We haven't talked about this much before, but I'm super intrigued now. So you're going to need to now refresh your memory on everything you know because I want to learn from you about all this
Oh
stuff.
God. Yeah.
You'd actually really like this Grimerica show that I went on. They talk about a lot of esoteric stuff, but can you read that that quote again from about the before and after the flood thing? We'll end with that.
Genesis.
Was it 5:3?
4? Oh, 5:3?
I don't know. I don't remember.
No. Yeah, it's 6:1.
6:1.
It says here. You mean the giants and all that?
Yeah. Or the son, the daughters of men.
Yeah,
the
it
son
says.
of God.
Well, this is 6:1, right? So now it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and the daughters were born to them, and the sons of God saw the daughters of men, and they were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves of all whom they chose. And then it says right here, there were. This is verse 4. There were giants on the earth in those days, and also afterwards, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown.
Wow. So the children were the men of old of renown. Wow.
Right, the giants, Nephilim. Yeah,
All right.
they were wicked. That's why he destroyed them, because he says they carry evil in their hearts continuously.
They were mighty men of renown, but they carry evil in their hearts.
Yeah, and every intent, it says here, verse 5, every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continuously. The
Man. All right. We'll end with that. Thanks for educating me a little bit.
No, that was fun. Anytime. We need to talk more about that.
All right, man. Take it easy.
All right.
Next week.
Thank you. All right.